Hi, everyone. This is Group 7. I'm Jasmine, that's Jennifer and Tabitha. And today we're going to be presenting our data analysis and findings on employee burnout and the impact of remote work. So here's our agenda. We will first begin by defining burnout and all of our target variables. And then we'll walk you through our two merged data sets. One of our data sets focus on workplace burnout, and the other one will focus on remote work impact. And then from there, we'll show you all of our analyses, so our models, visualizations, and then we're going to wrap up with our conclusions. So here's our research question, which is, what factors are contributing to employee burnout and is remote work helping? We chose this as our topic because we are all part of the workforce, either as employees or employers, and we all experience our own levels of burnout. We just want to know, where is the burnout coming from and how can we utilize the workplace to enhance the different well-beings of employees, whether it's through going fully remote or maybe just going hybrid. And our past research also backs this a little bit by mentioning how employees feel higher levels of job satisfaction once they start working from home. So that's something that employers can use to boost well-being.
So one of the questions is, what is burnout? One of the earliest and most used definitions comes from the research of Masalaj and Jackson. Quoted in another piece of work, they say that burnout is the result of chronic stress at the workplace, which has not been successfully dealt with. Characteristics of it are exhaustion, depersonalization, and reduced satisfaction and performance. To tell you guys a little bit more about our data sets, we decided to merge two. The first one was a mental health and burnout in the workplace survey, which included a 3,000 rows. Followed by that, we decided to merge a real life survey, with the other one being synthetic. This one is a real life survey for remote work health impact. This one was also around 3,000 with 3,175 rows. And we used the drop NA function during pre-processing to make sure that there was an even 3,000. And collectively, they had 39 columns related to factors contributing to burnout and other things related to remote work, such as age, gender, job satisfaction, remote work status, job role, and so on. We can also say that our data set is very diverse. It comes from different parts of the world. As you can see here highlighted in the blue, um, we have data from Australia, then followed by Brazil, and so on.
So the target variables that we identified with burnout methods and measures were job satisfaction, manager support, work hours per week, mental health, days off, and stress levels. And the initial data that we gathered was we did our burnout methods and measures, and we looked at the demographics, and the average age was around 40 years of age with a minimum of 22 and the maximum of 65. We also looked at the similar mean for the job satisfaction and stress levels, which showed that it was for the job satisfaction, it's a 5.44, and the stress level was a 5.51. And so there wasn't a really big difference to show that burnout was related to the job satisfaction and stress level. The different work-life balance scores from both of the data sets, there is a consideration with the scales of each data set. For the work-life balance, for the first data set, it showed at 5.45 with a minimum of 1 on the scale and a maximum of 5. On the second one, the work-life balance showed as a 2.99 with a minimum of 1 on that scale and a maximum of 5. So that would be something to consider in the evaluation of the data when it comes to the work-life balance.
So another thing that we did during our initial data exploration that we want you guys to keep in mind are correlation factors. So we wanted to look into what were things that were correlating to burnout risk or burnout levels. And we saw that there wasn't anything very significant, but some things to keep in mind that we did find were things like stress level, commute time, and work-life balance. Furthermore, we wanted to do some data visualizations on the association with burnout risk and remote work. So what we did is we created some binary variables based off the answer. So somebody answered yes, they work remote, they got a level of 1, or if they work hybrid, they also got a level of 1. If they just work on site, it's a 0. So that's something you can see here on this x-axis. So looking at the first one here on the left with the first data, anything with a 0 up here with burnout risk means that they are not a burnout risk. With a 1, they are a burnout risk. So let's look at the 1 here on the right. We see that the people who work remotely fall in the not a burnout risk. And then similarly, people who work from on site are also not a burnout risk. But we also wanted to look at that real life data. So here on the right, we can see people who work remotely fall in the medium burnout level. And then followed by that is the high burnout level. And lastly, the low burnout level. So we find from that there isn't much of an impact working remote when it comes to burnout risk.
On our classification and prediction models, we have the classification on the left hand and the prediction on the right hand side. The only variable that we got to run with this was the burnout level. All other variables did not run and work appropriately with it. This was a single split. The data was split into 60% training and 40% testing. The model's maximum depth was at 1 with a random state of 321. The models accurately classifies that individuals were experiencing burnout or if individuals were experiencing burnout or not. And lastly, the performance measures of 1 shows the results was a great performance, and most of the data falls within the low burnout risk.
So like previously stated, here we're going to show a little bit more of that. There was, when it comes to the area under the curve, there was a 1 indicating high performance. And our performance measures of precision and recall are also 1, which indicate that high performance from our classification model. And we can see that most of our data set falls in the high or the low burnout risk with 811.
All right, so to wrap up, our biggest finding that we want to share with you guys was that when we looked at our burnout levels, both the remote and the on-site employees equally ranked their perceived burnout as moderate. However, the remote employees reported that their second level of their burnout was high, which is very different than the on-site employees. So for the on-site, their most was moderate, and then their second most was low. For remote work, their most one was moderate, and then their second most one was high. So we think this is because when you're at home, you have more distractions, and you have your friends, hobbies, family, pets, and all those things to stop you from being as productive. Or on the other hand, since your job is just a few steps away from you, it's hard to actually get the feeling of clocking in and out. So you have to be very disciplined to keep your job and your life outside separated, or else they'll interfere with each other, and that can be stressful. So that's why we feel like our remote employees feel more high levels of burnout than the on-site. So another thing to mention here is that our major limitation for our project is that our analysis didn't really provide many significant findings. We believe this is because our merged data set did not have many data points that complemented each other well with our other merged data. And like we said earlier, everybody experiences their own kind of burnout. So burnout as it's in itself is really subjective. So even if it is defined, we all rate it and feel it differently. And then this is good in the same breath because it provides a nice grounding for future research. So in a way to avoid both of these limitations, we can focus more on specific population workplace effects. So like that includes looking at different household locations like city versus rural and urban, or looking at different incomes for those households, like dual income versus single income households. And here are our references that we used.